hour of the show, and I'm pleased as punch to have Valdamar Archuleta from the Colorado Log Cabin Republican Organization on again. He is decked out for America. Is that for Memorial Day weekend? Valdamar,
Of course, you got to celebrate everything. Memorial Day, Pride Month, the whole thing. Got the rainbows, got the flag.
Yeah, you are certainly clashing right now. There are gay men out there who are shivering thinking about a rainbow flag in front of Stars and Stripes. Of course, I'm kidding.
But you're right. Some probably are.
Well, we are entering June, which is a big celebration across the country, where gays, lesbians, bisexual, transgender people plus celebrate. And this is where we get stuck, because Dave and I were having a conversation off the air, and I wanted you to kind of talk about the origin of the Pride movement and why do we celebrate? What are we celebrating? What is being celebrated in June? Let's start with that first.
Well, overall, the celebration really is about the movement and the protest that brought about gay rights in the United States. And it is something really to celebrate. As I've mentioned last time I was on with you, I used to be on the Colorado Springs Pride Board. And every year we would always have the discussion, like, how do you balance out celebrating the historical achievements and the new, more cultural images that come with Pride? Because sometimes we almost would feel like Pride brings out all the stereotypes.
Yes.
And
yes.
do these Pride parades actually make the gay community, LGBT community, look better, or does it make us look worse? Does it validate people's stereotypes, or is it actually promoting our assimilation into the population? And I honestly, I don't know if there's a really good answer to that, because we then would talk about, well, if it was a parade of people in suits and briefcases, who would want to go watch that?
yeah, and there's a point there that is actually, but it would be kind of entertaining within a Pride parade to have like gay accountants who are all wearing suits and ties with their briefcases.
I think that would be great.
But it would be kind of funny because, to your point, and this is a conversation that I've had with people in my life, personally, both straight and gay, who my more conservative gay friends, and I have conservative gay friends, they cringe at some of the wild, over-the-top sexualization that happens during Pride, especially in your larger cities where you have people that are barely dressed, if dressed at all. But at the same time, they want the message to get out, like you just said. Look around you. There are gay people in your life. You just don't know they're gay. They're just like us, kind of thing. So how do you strike that balance? How did that conversation go?
It is really difficult. And here's one thing I will say about them. Like, Pride fests bring a lot of money to the Pride organizations, and money is important. Money talks. And so if you're going to do something, you want to get a lot of people there. And what's going to bring the people to the party? It's going to be a lot of this craziness. And so unfortunately, the commercial aspect of Pride has promoted that more, I don't know, the loud out, as Dave called them, the show-off gays are out there. and that's what brings the money to the organizations. Like I said, if it was a bunch of people in suits, doctors, it wouldn't be that interesting and people wouldn't show up.
Right.
Isn't it? It's not just getting the people out there. You want to attract the media, because that's going to get everybody awareness raised.
Exactly. And there is more to Pride than just the parades and that. And unfortunately, again, that is kind of what we see when we look at Pride. And there's a lot of people in the gay community and the whole LGBT community that aren't really a big fan of what Pride puts forth to the public every year. But there's also a reason why we also want to include that, because like when we talk about the history of Pride, why it's in June, what originally sparked this whole movement, a lot of the fighting was done by drag queens, by guys in leather, by lesbians on
the show-off gays. It was done by the show-off gays.
Yeah,
Stonewall.
It worked for them. The movement, and that would not have happened. So we do kind of have to have a recognition of where this came from. But today, we're fortunate that we live in a society where you don't have to be you could be just like everybody else and be gay.
Right.
And there was a time back in the day where that wasn't possible because general society would not have accepted you. So in order for you to live your gay lifestyle, you had to do it kind of underground in these seedy clubs. And that's where these cultures started to grow.
I didn't even think about it from that perspective. If you're not allowed to be mainstream, then yeah, you would find, you would find like-minded people in places that probably attracted the more outrageous types of
they did
of the gay community.
And looking at the history of Pride, like how it really started was like if you go back to when Prohibition was done away with in 1933. And alcohol was once again allowed to the public. A lot of governments, surprise, surprise, were kind of they abused their power. I know it's shocking, but and they still do it to this day. The threat of taking someone's liquor license away is a big threat to an establishment. And so back in like the 50s, 60s, that time period, a gay bar owner was very likely to lose his liquor license. And so, because they had laws, like we're looking at New York City, same-sex kissing and dancing was considered disorderly conduct, which someone could be arrested for. There were laws called masquerade laws that go back to 1845 when it was illegal for someone to dress up like a Native American to scare away tax collectors. Those laws were still on the books, and they were using those laws in the 20th century against drag queens and trans women. And so the state was using these laws to discriminate against the LGBT community and kind of drove them into the arms of organized crime. Mafia families started opening gay bars and bringing these establishments in. And surprise again, they were not doing it out of the kindness of their hearts to help the gay community. They were taking advantage of them. Sure. These establishments were horrible. They were called like bottle clubs or bottle bars. Mm-hmm. They did not have a liquor license. You paid at the door to get in. They gave you watered down alcohol that was either bootlegged or stolen. The hygiene there was bad. The water was bad. Mafia owned the cigarettes there, the jukeboxes there. And if they saw someone come in who was maybe a school teacher, a federal employee, or a wealthy person, they would blackmail them about outing them to the community. And so the mafia was really taking advantage of the LGBT community. And this is like the late 60s. And this was happening all over the place. But right now, here we're looking at like Greenwich Village, New York. Mm-hmm. The Genovese crime family happened to own the Stonewall Inn, as well as a lot of other gay establishments in Greenwich Village. And they kind of bought off the police there in the 6th precinct of New York. So they would just kind of look the other way as to what was happening in these establishments. And there were even like corrupt policemen who would kind of let the mafia know, like, all right, we're going to do a raid. Right. So clean up. We're coming in on this date or whatever. And even with the Stonewall's kind of where this is known as starting. Mm-hmm. And the gay movement was already happening and things were going on for a while. But Stonewall was really that spark that pushed the LGBT community over the edge.
Well,
started the movement.
But don't you think that Stonewall was also the first time that the gay community sort of became a part of the national conversation? Because before that, it was, oh, he's the confirmed bachelor. I mean, I remember being a child in the 70s, and we have a friend who is just, you talk about a show-off gay. I adore this man. He's in theater. He's like the walking, talking stereotype of an older gay man. I love him. Yeah. But seriously, he was as gay as the day was long, and people, oh, he's the confirmed bachelor. They wouldn't even say, and this was like in the mid 70s. So
like Liberace.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sure. Like, yeah. Okay. But
he's just a little flamboyant. That's all.
This was the first time that I feel like it was kind of shoved into the national conversation and people went, wait a minute.
And it was because of the visuals of that night. Originally, it was the early morning when there was a raid on Stonewall. And the issue was, again, the mafia owned the building. There was no liquor licenses. A lot of illegal stuff was going on there. And these raids happen regularly. Actually, Stonewall a few weeks earlier had another raid. So these raids happened. But this time, just the community had enough and they started to fight back. And so it was known as like the Stonewall riot or the Stonewall disturbance or whatever people are going to call it. But at that point, there was a 6-day long riot, so to speak, where the gay community, the LGBT community was fighting back against the oppression they were receiving. And really this oppression was coming from all over the place. It was society, it was the mafia, it was the government. And unfortunately, like we'll probably talk about in a minute, police are the ones who are the front people who people visually see.
Right.
And so today now, like in recent times, the police are being blamed for the whole thing, when you can see the situation was much more complex than just the bad policeman came in, because they're enforcing stuff that was handed down to them.
And I was going to say, here's the thing. Ultimately, someone was directing them to enforce these laws. And that's not to say that there were not police officers who harbored anti-gay sentiment. That's a whole other topic for another time. But ultimately, they were just enforcing the rules as they were being ordered to enforce them. And the reason,
I agree.
I mean,
and
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, yeah, exactly. I'm like your point exactly. Like the rules came down to them, and yeah, I'm sure some of them, like this was 1969.
Right.
A lot of people in the country did not like gay people.
Right.
So I'm sure there were police there who maybe that was something in the back of their mind. Not giving them, a clean slate on this either, but the situation was much bigger than that. And then a year after, in 1970, in June, the very first Pride Parade was held in New York City. And like we were talking off the air, we call it Gay Pride. Originally, they wanted to call it Gay Power, but there was already a Black Power movement, and they kind of wanted to make a distinction from that. I don't know exactly why Pride was the word that was chosen, but it became Gay Pride. And that's why we celebrate Pride in June, because of the whole Stonewall incident.
Do you know why the rainbow flag was adopted as the symbol of the gay community? I've always wondered that, and I keep meaning to look it up, and I keep forgetting to look it up. So, but
I don't know offhand exactly the meaning of each color, but it was a flag. I believe it was designed in San Francisco, and as you can see behind me, there were originally 8 colors. Indigo and pink were also in it. Later, they took those 2 colors out to make it. Actually, it was because flag makers back in the day actually sewed fabric together, and it was hard to find all 8 colors. It was easier to just do 6.
While you were talking, I pulled up the history. Can I give it? Because I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, because each one, it's like spirituality or something. Yeah, go ahead.
The rainbow flag was created in 1978 by an artist, designer, Vietnam War veteran, and drag performer Gilbert Baker. He was commissioned to create the flag by Harvey Milk in San Francisco. And I'm looking at the time, the most commonly imaged, blah, blah, blah. The different colors within the flag are meant to represent togetherness. Since LGBT people come in all races, ages, and genders, and rainbows are both natural and beautiful, the original flag featured 8 colors, each having a different meaning. At the top was hot pink, which represented sex, red for life, orange for healing, yellow signifying sunlight, green for nature, turquoise to represent art, indigo for harmony, and finally violet at the bottom for spirit. But they left 2 of them off because, as the point you were making, when you have to sew these things together,
it was too hard.
Yeah, it's cheaper.
Unity, wouldn't it be nice if our LGBT community was still into all of that?
And that brings
Unity
us
and togetherness.
to why we're here.
You just
right
had
now.
a great idea. Why not call it Gay Unity, a parade, instead of Gay Pride? I like that much better.
Dave is cranky about the fact that it seems like when you say gay pride, and I feel this way about white pride, about honestly black pride.
Yeah.
I believe
my feeling of it is that it's nothing to be proud of and it's nothing to be ashamed of.
It's
simply
is
a fact of life.
Yeah, it just is.
So I did nothing special to become a gay man. It just kind of happened.
And don't get me wrong, gay individuals do spectacular things,
right,
and they can be proud of those things. But just the simple act of being born gay, it's just a fact. It's nothing to be proud of.
I completely agree with you.
But gay unity, I love that phrase.
Yeah. I like that too, but the gay community doesn't really listen to me, so I don't think that has any influence in changing that.
Wait a minute, Valdamar, you're a gay person. Why wouldn't they listen to you? I think we know the answer. But this brings us to why we are here today, because Valdamar, we now have a situation where pride events across the country, including major pride events like the one in New York City and the one in Denver, have said to the police, who not only provide security when the parades and stuff are held in person, but there are also a lot of gay policemen and women in the ranks of these police departments. And now these pride hang on one second. Let me do that. And now these pride organizations are getting the they're banning police from their pride events. So what are your thoughts on this, first of all?
Well, on a personal note, it really bothers me. I lived in New York City from 1998 to 2004. And so I was in New York City on September 11th, 2001. And I saw all those happenings with my own eyes. I saw people running. I saw the buildings fall. The building I was in, it was encased in dirt and smoke, like it was nighttime for a while. And I also saw what the law enforcement did for our community there and the great respect we had for them there. And I always go back to them. When I see a police officer, I think about things like that, like what they put themselves into for the betterment of the community.
Right.
But on a bigger scale, like looking at the LGBT community, look at what they've done for us. In 2013, there were 2 people shot in San Francisco Pride. The police put an end to that threat. 2 years later, there was another man shot in San Francisco. And again, the police put an end to that threat. And one of the biggest things I guess the second biggest mass shooting our country ever saw was at the Pulse nightclub. And it was an attack on the LGBT community. It was chosen because
it was a gay bar.
We are who we are.
Yeah.
And 49 people were killed there. The police came in. They were bringing people out to safety. They stopped the threat. Again, if they didn't go in and do that, how many more people?
Everybody would have been massacred in that building. Every single person would have been dead if they had not gone in and stopped it. And
exactly. And every year, like at our Pride events, there's always police there. They make sure that we're safe. They provide security for us. And so to demonize this entire group of people because of an act of, like they're calling it's for justice. It's a statement towards justice. Like, how is that just to now discriminate against another group of people? And especially when our whole movement has been about being against discrimination. One of the biggest protests we ever did as a community was in 1979, the March on Washington. And there was a whole slew of things that we wanted. 2 of them was to ban discrimination against the LGBT community and to end discrimination. And so how can now, these many years later, we are the ones discriminating against a group of people?
Valdamar, I have to say that the gay community feels comfortable enough to discriminate against someone else is an indication of how far the gay community has come, because that is a privilege that you cannot afford when you're at the bottom of the heap. Do you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Exactly. We went from being the bullied to being the bullies.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate and sad. Valdamar Archuleta is with the Colorado Log Cabin Republicans. I put a link to this GOP organization if you'd like to be a part of it. They welcome everyone. You don't have to be gay to come to their fabulous parties. Exactly. Or they're having a barbecue this summer, so hopefully I'm going to be at that. He's going to let me know the details when that becomes available. But Valdamar, I so appreciate your perspective on this, because I think that just understanding the history helps people understand why there is so much to celebrate, and that now we've gone, from your point, from being bullied to being the bullies. I hope that they would reconsider this stance, especially
I really
year.
do too, because they are a representation of our entire community, including the conservative LGBT community. And so we just want them to step that section up and be a little better representation of us.
All right. Valdamar Archuleta with the Colorado Log Cabin Republicans. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.